Hi everyone, eager sewers. I'm back with another variation for my Vivienne dress. This time I've used a denim fabric printed with quite a bit of stretch, and this is the same pattern that I've used and the same size as I've used for the little silk dress with the organza skirt, which didn't fit on the dummy and could not be shut in the back. So you can see what a massive difference fabric can also make. So on this particular dress, the skirt does not have a lining. We're just going to overlock and stitch it up. We've got the same typical Vivienne collar here, and we've got those beautiful buttons, and they say love Frocks and Frolics. I like those. Anyway, on this dress, it's all hand stitched too, and also along here, and you get a very clean finish. So we can now get started with how to sew one of these lovely dresses.
We have for the back, 2 backs of course, and the sides for that. And then the front has a side as well on the upper fabric, and the center front, which is cut on the fold. Then we've got the tabs. You want them in violin, you want them in lining and in the shell fabric. And the lining I've also cut a little bit bigger so that it looks when it's done as if it was piped. You can of course pipe it too. And then the collar, we have got violin, we've got the under collar or lining and the upper collar. And for the lining, we've got an all-in-one lining, which makes it so much easier. And for the back, we've obviously got 2 backs. The skirt has got a front cut on the folds and 2 backs. And don't forget to mark your pleats, because this has a pleat. Now we're going to close our princess seams on the front, and I would try to do that without pinning actually. And then we're closing the shoulder seams of the lining as well. Next, you can also prep up your tabs, iron on your violin, iron the violin also onto the collar. And then we're going to sew around here, leaving the neckline open obviously. Do that on both collars. And here you can see I've sewn together my tabs as well, and then you turn them, and when you press them you can see that because the underside is a little bit bigger, it presses out towards the side and it looks a little bit like piping, and I really like that effect. Obviously you can pipe it properly. That is up to you. Next, you're going to iron the seam allowances to the center front, and also top stitch with a long stitch 3.5 setting on your sewing machine the front seams. Then iron the seam apart also from the shoulders. And here I want to show you a little trick. This is the collar point. If you sew it round with a really small stitch, you're going to get a perfect corner. If you're sewing a corner, you will get a round little nose. So that's something to remember. Also something I don't show here, but keep in mind that when you iron your collar, in order for it to not roll up and stand up with a little flip to the front, you want to make the underside a little bit shorter so it pulls the collar down. And I show that in some detail on the dress with the organza skirt and the blue bodice. So here I'm going to insert my tabs, and I would recommend you put them on the side back, and they need to be about 1.5 centimeters above the edge. And once we've done that and sewn them in and top stitch the seam, we can then put together the shoulder seams here as well. I have to say though, if your fabric is really heavy, this is really hard to pull through, so you might want to do that last. So now mark the center front and then pin on your collar. And when you sew the collar on here, you stop about 4 centimeters before the end so that you can get the zip in, and also very close to the edge. You don't want this to be seen afterwards. And once it's sewn on all the way around, we can then put the lining over the top and make sure that you fold away your collar. You might want to like hand tuck it down a bit so that it can't get caught. And for the armhole, I'm using stay tape. I'm not using it for the neck. That's not really necessary. You've got a collar in there. And here you can see it. I've put the stay tape on and sewn it in. And that will prevent the armhole from stretching. Cut back as much as you can on these, because if you're using like jeansy, heavy fabric like I have here, that is really important. You could also cut back in stages, so you've got like a staggered seam, and that of course will then make it much flatter. And you also snip so that when we turn it, there is no stress, no tension on your curves. The other thing we want to do is understitch a little bit. That prevents the lining from rolling out. So you can only go a little bit, and you could leave it as well. And here I've done it. I've stitched it, the seam allowance down onto the lining, just a little bit up to there. And I've done also a little bit on the neckline, and it's beautiful when you turn it over. Now comes the really, really hard part, which is putting a safety pin into the back end and then pulling it through. And because I'm using these really heavy tabs and it's a really heavy fabric, I struggled so bad. This did not go through, and you can see it got totally stuck. And I thought I'd leave this in this video because you think, oh, Marina gets it right every time. No, I thought I could get it through, but no way. So to help myself out, I gave up at this point and then rolled my tabs really, really tightly. And then I tried the whole lot again. And that was almost impossible as well. But lo and behold, 5 minutes later, I managed to pull it through. I would suggest that if you have a really heavy fabric like that, you can just leave the back a little bit open here at this part and then put on your tab afterwards, because it's just almost impossible to pull it through. If you have a lighter weight fabric, of course, that's not the case. I just thought I'd show you this because I don't want you to get stuck like I did here, because it was pretty horrendous. Right, next job is to then put that tab back in if you've done it like that. Now I can press the whole lot really well. And I just love this, how this comes together so quickly, and it's so neat. I never get bored of it either. Make sure you iron the neckline as well, really, really well. And my bodice ears almost finished. I can now close my side seams. Iron the seam apart. And then we also want to release the tension on the underarm, because this is all really, really thick fabric. I actually cut it all away. You don't necessarily need to do that. A snip will do, but in my case, I did. And then get your thumb in there and hold it in place while you turn it, and then iron it. And it gives you a perfect finish. The tab needs to sit really straight towards the front, very, very pretty, and we can do the skirt next. Make sure it's the stretchy side you have on the side. That is easy to get wrong on the center back. Trust me. So make sure that the straight grain is on the center back. Sew them together and then iron the seams apart. Now we're going to start doing the pleats, and it's important to start on the side seam and move the first snip you've got on either side onto the side seam. That is really the easiest. And then you move the other one towards the center of the front, and then you come from the other side and you move that on. So essentially the small distance is what is showing on the top. I'm also showing you a different method to do this on the little video set the Vivienne pleats. I did that on the adult Vivienne dress, and it's on a straight skirt, and it shows it slightly different. So these are really the two methods that you can use to work your way around the skirt. And on the center front, we're actually going to have the pleat underneath it. You can see that here. So work your way all the way around. And then on the other side, from the side seam, you work your way, obviously, to the center back. Now I'm moving it over again. And I have to say, don't think I always get this right. When I filmed this first, I put them in wrong and I had to undo it. So follow these directions here, and after a while it becomes really second nature. It has now, because I've made like 10 of these dresses at least, so it is. But when you first start, you might want to put this video on while you do your pleats and rewatch it a few times. And then at the center back, you can see that we have got a little gap there to put our zip in. Now I can find my snip and I can close the center back. Now, a lot of people like to close the center back last, and that's also totally fine. I prefer to close the center back at this stage, but there's no reason why you can't use your own method to do that. I see most people do it the other way, and actually sometimes I do too. I think this gives you the nicer finish, but well, that's just opinion really. And now I'm going to put my bodice onto the skirt. So I'm going to find the center back, pin that together, then move round to the side seam and the center front and the other side seam and the back again. I've worked out the pleats quite accurately so that you don't have to really address any of that. As you can see here, it fits on perfect. So the only time you have to adjust the pleats is when you've adjusted the bodice. And I have to say, these pleats, ooh, no, I don't like that when you have to adjust things. Anyway, now we're going to iron the seam upwards so that it sits really nice and flat in the dress. And then I'm going to quickly do my hem. And it's just turned up, and because this is a stretchy fabric, it's actually no bother to do this and stitch it through. On silk and such alike, this is not so easy, and I prefer to line my skirt, but this is so heavy I didn't want to line it, so I just stitched it up 2 centimeters, or 1.5 centimeters is plenty actually, and then pressed it. So now we're going to put the zip in just as I've shown you on my video. So you just pop on over there if you don't know how to do that yet, and have a look at how to put in a concealed zip. And finally, we're just going to slip stitch our lining, and that takes some time. So you need to pin it all down, and an hour later, you'll be done. It is really so much time, isn't it, with this hand stitching at the end, but I think it gives a really nice effect. What you want to watch out though is that your lining doesn't slip too close to the zip, because it tends to do that. So keep moving down with your needle as you sew it in so that it doesn't then interfere with the zip. And you can also use a little hand stitch here if your collar still comes up. You can just tuck it to the dress permanently, which I would actually do on most dresses. And now I'm sewing on these lovely Love Frocks and Frolics buttons, which I've ordered thinking they'd be much smaller, and of course I didn't check it. I just ordered them one Saturday morning while I had my coffee in bed, and they are massive. But on this dress I think they're absolutely beautiful, and of course Love Frocks and Frolics on it is just like really cool as well. So this is the dress finished, and it's also the very last one in the series of Vivienne dresses, and they are now all in the YouTube playlist. So hop on over there and see what we've got in store for you.
Thank you for watching again, and don't forget there are many more videos that you can watch, both in the playlist on YouTube and also on frocksandfrolics.com on the project page for the Vivienne. See you again soon. Bye.